Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, Capital One Bank, Cassidy Turley, C.B. Richard Ellis, Chelsea Lighting, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova Burns and Gian Tomasi, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Corman Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Site Comply, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, the Wickoff Group, Urban American, and Ackman Ziff Real Estate, Ariel Property Advisors, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Goldman Properties, Moynihan Group, Muss Development, RAL Development Services, the Spandrel Group, LLC, Rosewood Realty Group, Triangle Equities.
So with 8 million people in New York City, one of the biggest problems that we have is affordable housing for our citizens. So today I've assembled 4 gurus who are going to provide their insight on what's happening to affordable housing. They include Maurice Coleman, the Senior Vice President for Community Development for Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Paul Freitag, Managing Principal for the Jonathan Rose Company, Daniel Moritz, Principal at the Arca Companies, and last but not least, my friend Vinny Rizzo, the Principal at the Briarwood Organization, who is celebrating their 100th anniversary this year. So, happy birthday, happy anniversary. You've been in business longer than a couple of the guys sitting here. How do you see the affordable housing in New York? Is it easier to be in the business? Is it harder to be in the business as a developer?
It's a lot more difficult than when we first started. Today, money is available for rental projects.
For the good established. That's what I heard Mr. Coleman tell me before the show. It's not for everybody, right?
Not for everybody either. So money is available for rentals, money is available for rehab, but for new construction, it's difficult for most builders.
So let's talk, and Paul, I really think, we were talking about this before, because you have a number of projects in different stages, and you, Dan, you have a number of projects. Explain to my audience affordable housing, the 50, 30, and 20, the lottery process, what happened to you on Villa Verde with units, and how somebody can get this, because that's really very important to me to get that message across.
Well, I think, as we were discussing earlier, there's an unquenchable demand for affordable housing in New York City. So one of the issues is that for every unit of affordable housing that's developed, you will have dozens, maybe even hundreds of applications for that unit.
How many did you have for Villa Verde?
Well, for Villa Verde, we have 150 rental units, and we had 7,500 applications. So, and that's, I think, not untypical. So what's important is that all of these affordable housing projects do, in fact, have very strict requirements for advertising. You can go to the HPD website. Now, actually, a lot of the advertising is done online. There are requirements for press. It's very important that actually you get applications in.
But here's the big question. I remember, as I was saying before, anyone can chime in. I had a doorman in my building who wanted to get an apartment, and he said he applied. He got the application, and unfortunately he earned a couple of dollars too much, or sometimes another woman who was listening to me on 1010 Ones said she really wants to buy an apartment, but she makes a little too little. What are these bands, these income level bands?
Well, there's a very strict income requirement for each tier of affordable housing. For example, we primarily develop affordable housing that's eligible up to 60% of area median income.
And how much is that for, if I really want to get this to my audience?
Area median income for a family of 4 today is about $83,000. So 60% would be a family of 4 earning $50,000 approximately.
Up to 50,000.
Up to 50,000.
For a family of 4.
Correct.
Now, what if it was a family of 2?
Family of 2 is probably about 40,000. It's about 5,000 for each family member.
And how much would the rent be for somebody like that?
For a 2-bedroom in one of our buildings, it's about $1,000 a month. 1 bedroom's about $850 a month. Because the rents are below market, like Paul was saying, we get an enormous amount of applications for any one of our units. The last lottery we did for about 83 units in the Bronx, we got about 4,000 applications. So, it's very select.
And there are ties that, there's a priority for the community board, there's
Correct.
a priority for people as city workers, there are priorities for police, hearing impaired, there are always all these priorities. My question is this, those are rentals. Now, Vinny had this project up in the Bronx, and you have up in Villa Verde, co-op units. Talk to us about that. What are the co-op units in your apartment buildings?
The co-ops, the 2-bedroom apartments are in the 190s to 2.25. The 3-bedroom apartments are 280 to 320.
And how much can somebody earn for those apartments in your apartments?
Well, for ours, ours are actually a little less expensive. We closed at a point in time that there was a great concern over the affordability of affordable co-op units. So our prices range actually from about $145,000 up to $180,000.
And what is the income level to qualify to get one of that?
You have to be earning at least $55,000 to $60,000. That would be the floor in order to be able to get a mortgage. But then the caps actually range from about 95 up to about 140. So really, they can go quite high, and considering the fact that family income could consist of both working adults.
Now, I still remember, one of Vinny's good friends, a very good friend of mine, Jeff Levine, when he built up in Harlem one of the first developments, a new hot property on 116th Street, and some of these people were able to get these apartments, and they made like a windfall when they sold. Are they allowed to sell at a profit?
For our project right now, essentially, if you must resell to a buyer who is still in the same income requirements. Right. So they still have to fit into the same AMI bands. Now, AMI bands tend to go up every year, so there is a possibility of making a profit on the sale of your unit, but it shouldn't be an enormous windfall.
So, Mr. Banker, you're the guy who gives the money to these guys to build. Couple of questions. Why do you give them money? And how much money is there, and who's getting it? Because, you were saying prior to the show, it's the strongest surviving. You're giving money to the people who are well-established, well-created, guys who have good experience, men and women, okay? I know Andrew Kretschmer, and there are others in there. Why is Bank of America Merrill Lynch in this business? Why? And
A few reasons. One, we have a 10-year, $1.5 trillion commitment to affordable housing nationally. Within that, we look to work with every single player that is committed to the space, to your point, Michael, that has a strong track record, credible reputation in the market for doing high-quality work. Paul, Danny, Vinny all have that. We were fortunate to work with Danny on the Richmond Hill project, as he mentioned earlier. That's 182 units, affordable housing for families, affordable housing for seniors. We're looking at a project with Paul right now that also has a charter school component to it. So for us, the end game is to build communities where people can live, work, and play, and to try to create a level of affordability in New York that we could keep the vibrant dynamic of New York present so it can continue to be a world-class city. So at the end of the day, we're looking to have impact, make a profit, and do good work, and we want to do that with partners.
Now here's an interesting subject that we discussed because of Paul's for sale co-ops and Vinny's for sale co-ops, both in the Bronx and also in the Rockaways. Vinny has said numerous times, and a number of people have said this on the show and others, that it's difficult to get end loans. I understand you're providing the financing to build these developments. You're buying the tax credits, you're doing this. Are you also providing, or another division of Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, providing the end loans?
That's correct. So where we can, we want to be a one-stop shop. So we want to participate in the equity. We want to provide the construction financing. And we have 2 projects in the Bronx and one in Brooklyn, actually, where we were able to be the majority in-loan provider. Doesn't mean that we will do every in-loan, because every in-loan is a specific case, but we would like to provide that one-stop solution.
Here's the question, and let's talk about the end loan difficulty, because this is important. It's nice to win the lottery, it's nice to qualify, but how hard is it for somebody to get an end loan, Vinny?
It is very difficult for them to achieve getting an end loan. The end loans it's a long, difficult process that by the time you complete the last item necessary for that end loan, the first and second items have expired and have to be redone. The other major problem is the ability to get an appraiser that knows the property and can give an accurate appraisal for that property.
You know, I heard about that. You brought it up, and somebody brought it up to me the other day. I happened to be I was in Florida, and somebody was talking about appraisal. I was there for 24 hours. That you give it to 3 different people today, and some of the people really don't know anything about that market. So it's very difficult, as you say, to figure out what the right value is for the appraisal.
Well, they won't allow sales in the same development to be used for that appraisal.
They won't use that as statistics, or for
You know,
appraisal?
I can have 100 sales, but they won't use any of those sales
As comps.
as comps.
Let's talk about 62 years of age, okay? You know, there are more and more people, baby boomers, who are reaching that level of time, including yours truly. And, let's talk about housing for the seniors, for the 62, and the difficulties that some of them have because Social Security, equals a certain amount and the expenses. Let's talk about your developments, or what's happening on that.
Sure. As you said, there's really going to be an unmet demand for affordable senior housing. And historically, the focus of new development affordable housing in the city has been geared towards families and not towards seniors. So there hasn't been a sufficient amount of senior housing created. We've been trying to go a little bit outside our comfort zone and trying to develop a little more senior housing for 62 or over. We had success on Staten Island with a redevelopment of called the Park Lane at Seaview. It was on the historic Seaview Hospital campus. It was a complicated financing which used historic tax credits, low-income tax credits, state tax credits, and the end income mix was 50% market rate seniors and 50% affordable rate.
Okay, so 50% market rate. Did they have to qualify?
No, it was pure market rate apartments.
So you could charge whatever the market
Whatever
was.
the market would be.
And the other 50 was qualified to who?
To 60% of AMI. And
And the person had to be at least 62 years of age.
correct.
For the head of household, or if it's a
The head of
family of
house.
2, it could be.
Typically, the head of household needs to be 62 or over. And contrary to popular belief, which is that you can't rent tax credit housing to seniors, we had great success renting that development up. And part of the reason is there are amenities that you wouldn't necessarily have in a typical tax credit deal.
Such as?
A gym, a computer lab, social services. You need that type of amenity in order to attract seniors to your building. And so we're trying to duplicate that now in Richmond Hill with a 65-unit development, new construction, which Bank of America is financing for us. And it's an interesting site because it's side by side with a family development that we're doing. So we're trying to bring diversified housing to that community, which has seen literally no affordable housing.
We were talking before about taking properties which have come out of or coming out of Mitchell Lama or Section 8, and it's they need rehab. Let's discuss that and what you do to afford them, and the fact that people like Maurice are there to provide you the money to fix that up.
Well, we actually have just completed a project like this in Harlem. It's 10 buildings right next to one another on West 135th Street, a total of 200 units. We did an in-place rehab of the units, so no tenants were relocated. We actually created a couple hotel units where tenants potentially could shift for a couple days while we did work in their units. But really, the brunt of our work focused on really trying to improve the performance of the systems within the buildings. We put in all new boilers, new roofs. We actually got a grant from HUD in order to put a solar array on the roof. And what's, the energy performance of that building is actually going to double in terms of sort of efficiency because of the improvements that we've made.
What about besides the systems? Are you putting in new kitchens? Are you putting
Yes.
in, new heating systems and so on?
In that particular building, we replaced fixtures, put in low-flow water fixtures, replaced some appliances. But once again, because of the goal of not trying to have tenants out of their units for too long, we didn't do full kitchens. We wait for the turnover of the unit to actually do that.
What about community facility space? We were talking about it before. You brought it up briefly. In many places, and you did it on 125th Street, and I know you did it years ago, with the retail and the community facility. It's important, and you get the tax credits. Talk about community facility.
Both in terms of preservation projects we've worked on and also new construction. We just did a project out in East New York, Dumont Avenue. It's the first land project with the city to have solar panels on the top, and for that green energy to power the laundry facility, the elevators, and the common space. We created a very neat community space outside for many of the families who have kids there, for them to play, for them to interact. We put a bike rack and everything in there as well to encourage people to start actually being full participants in the community and just getting to know the community as we look to build the second phase of this project, which is the Gateway Elton project, which is bringing both retail and affordable housing and green development to that area. On preservation deals, as Paul mentioned, it's important. It's important to go in, and many times with some of the older buildings, and to do that uplift, fixture remodeling to give the building a better feel and a more open environment where people can take ownership of the place that they live. So we look to do it, whether it's preservation as well as new construction.
There is land in some of these developments which are 20, 30, 40 years of age, which was done at one time for parking lots or other situations which can be redeveloped, and also in New York City housing authority. What's happening with the NYCHA, as they call, for the redevelopment of those areas to build on the parking lots or other things?
Well, NYCHA's really done an evaluation of all of the land that they own and the buildings that they own. And most of them were developed in the so-called tower in the park structure. And so you have a large tower with a lot of developable land around it. And NYCHA, has a serious shortfall of cash. And this is one of the best ways that they can both raise money and increase affordable housing.
So NYCHA is now selling this land to a developer?
It's kind of been on a case-by-case basis. They've been issuing RFPs, and in some cases, they've been looking for a purchase price from a developer in exchange for the development rights. And in two of the more recent RFPs that came out, Randolph Houses and Prospect Plaza, they're giving the land for $1. I think it's more to the location.
So let's understand. The developer, Vincent, Daniel, Paul, can get the land for $1. So, and what will you be planning? What is the RFP requiring you to build on that site?
Well, I was actually going to give an example that wasn't an RFP example. Okay. We're currently moving towards closing and beginning construction on a project in NYCHA site in East Harlem. And what's interesting about that is I think it really there demonstrates how the scarcity of land is really now having to have competing sort of uses go for one parcel. So on this one parcel, as we were referring to earlier, it will actually have a mix of a charter school and affordable housing on one site. And I think that you're going to find this more and more on.
So now, as the developer, will you build the charter school for free for the charter, or you'll be renting it to the charter school? What will
No,
you
it's
be-
more that you have a mix of sort of public agencies. So we are going to HPD, HDC, the traditional housing sources for the affordable housing. Our partner, Harlem RBI Charter School, is working with the School Construction Authority, the DOE, for their portion of it.
And will you provide the financing on both sides?
We hope so. That's our goal, but it's competitive, and but the end goal is to try to figure out projects like that, as Danny and Paul mentioned there, where we can be a full, all-in, one-stop shop and user. So equity, debt, clean across the board.
But let's go back to the other nitrogen products. Okay, so here somebody's offering this for $1. What do they want you to build on this site? I don't want to get to the charter school. I want to know what.
Sure. Typically, there's extended affordability restrictions. So rather than 30 years of affordability, you may have to commit to 50 or 60 years, or even in perpetuity on some sites. An interesting thing about the NYCHA RFPs that are out now is they're the first time in New York City history where they're combining public housing with so-called affordable tax credit housing. So it's a different tier of affordability. Public housing is affordable to 40% of AMI, whereas tax credit housing is affordable to 60% of AMI. And they've never been combined in the same development before in New York City. So there's additional affordability requirements. There's typically additional green requirements. Any RFP is going to have to be, LEED certified, the highest level of green construction, and there'll be a lot of competition for this.
Here's a question for the Dean of Affordable Housing, my friend, Mr. Rizzo. You've seen it, and I still remember maybe 15 years ago when I went up to the Bronx for a groundbreaking, or not the groundbreaking, for a ribbon cutting of a place. And I went there with Eric Seltzer and something, and we were saying, what happens if that developer is no longer in business? What's going to happen to that property? You've been around for many years. So what do you see? Have people, they built something, they did it for a tax credit, they did it for other reasons. What happens when the developer's no longer in business, there's a fight? What happens in those situations?
I think
to the older buildings, which, that you had to take over in Coney Island or some other places.
Well, I think basically if that developer, by retiring, so to speak, abandons those buildings, another developer can be found to take over that is an excellent building manager who can keep those buildings as they should be kept.
Here's a question, which, this is a show for public and capitalism. Why do you become an affordable housing developer? I mean, you like to be giving back to the community, but why do you do affordable housing? Wouldn't it be easier to possibly be in the for-profit market? Paul?
Well, I think there's enormous satisfaction in developing these units, creating these apartments for families that otherwise would have a terrific problem finding affordable housing within New York City. And the truth of the matter is, within the New York City market, where the cost to build housing is so high, a huge percentage of New Yorkers are actually closed out of market rate housing. Affordable housing really becomes their only option.
Okay, but why does the ARCA company, why does the Jonathan Rose company, why does the Briarwood organization, you're building because you're making some profit, okay? Are you limited to the amount of profit that you can make when you build affordable housing?
Yes. I would say being a builder in affordable housing, there's the social aspect, which I think any builder of affordable housing has to feel that social connection to the tenants that they're housing. Financially, it's a good business, but it's a consistent business, which is more of you're going to hit a lot of singles, you're going to hit doubles.
The home runs are less.
It's not a home run business,
Yeah.
and you're
Few and far between.
It's less risk, but it's less reward.
But here's my question. You build or you develop? Are you both a builder and a developer?
We do everything. We develop, we build, and we own everything long term.
And you are both also.
Yes, we are.
You build and you develop.
And we're just a developer. We don't build.
You don't build?
No.
Why don't you build?
We like to preserve the competitive aspect of working with different builders. We bid out every project. We try to get the best pricing we can. We feel like that actually creates a good check and balance between the developer and the builder.
And you as the bank, how do you like it? Do you prefer the builder, or I mean, I'm not saying, I know you do a lot of business with Jonathan Rowe's company. I mean, is there any thoughts in your mind if it's better to deal with a builder developer or just a good developer?
I think we're non-biased. I think the key piece for us is just working with good sponsors. We, like Paul mentioned, want to learn from the process. So we have extremely valuable and good intelligence that comes from working with the sponsor who is the builder developer. We get the sense of the market landscape and what's happening out there on pricing when we work with pure developers as they bid out different projects. You know, the key for us is just making sure that all the players involved can execute. And property management at the end of the day is very, very key for us.
I think one of the biggest hurdles affecting affordable housing development today is getting the land. Because everyone was talking prior to the show that in order for you to build affordable, either you can get it for $0, $1, as they would say, or you can get it but you can't pay these prices of $80, $100 a square foot to build. So where and the
Not
dire
affordable.
need, okay, affordable.
Yeah.
Where do we have? Where is the next? I mean, it's not 10 years ago, 15 years ago in East Harlem or the Rockaways or certain other parts. Where in the city can we? Where is the next space that affordable housing will be built? Any idea?
Well, a lot of
Since you're youngest over here, so
a lot of the affordable housing has been in the South Bronx and certain pockets of Brooklyn, like East New York and Brownsville, because you're not necessarily competing with market rate developers for land in those areas. We've been trying to seek different areas like Queens and Staten Island to build affordable housing, and you kind of have to get creative in order to find land that works. The large site that we're developing in Richmond Hill, Queens, the land was affordable, and that was only because it was a brownfield. It was a contaminated site, and we were willing to take on the liability of cleaning up the site, and that enabled us to buy it at a price that worked in order to build affordable housing there.
which relates a little bit to you and Gowanus Green, which eventually will be, because it's a location that you can build, but there's brownfields, there's master sewer, I mean, Superfund cleanup and everything else. What about, I mean, there is still land in Coney Island, and there's still land in the Rockaways. Do you see some more affordable being built in those markets?
There will be those units built in those markets. However, the more you pay for the land, the more subsidy you have to achieve in order to attract those people that will buy or rent those units.
And I would say Coney Island has gone above and beyond where land pricing needs to be for affordable housing.
But Coney Island, if you want to really look at it, we have in Coney Island probably one of the largest number of affordable apartments that were built over the years. I'm not saying now, I'd say in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, there's been an enormous amount of affordable housing. And a lot of that, especially what you took over with the related companies, had to be rehabbed because of the world over there.
Well, part of the issue with the lack of land and the ability to find financing for new construction is the new reality of affordable housing, which is preservation.
Right.
I wish we had more time, but I hope that later on in the season we will and bring you back. I'd like to thank our banker, the man who's providing much money to affordable housing, Maurice Coleman.
Thank you.
Our developer, our architect also, Paul Freitag of Jonathan Rowe's company, Daniel Moritz of the ARCA companies, and last but definitely never least, Vinnie Rizzo of the Briarwood organization. See you next week.